When you look at Calgary now through a sport lens, its major facilities are old, over 30 years old. Is there a plan B? What does that look like?
Well, you know, I was at the football game yesterday, and I continue to think that McMahon is a great place to watch a football game once you're in your seat. Getting to your seat, kind of miserable. And so, you know, this had been our plan to really redo McMahon and make that a beautiful venue for future generations. There's 7 other venues within the city of Calgary that need that kind of rejuvenation at different levels. Some of them will last longer than others. And of course, we really need that field house. So we're now in the point where we probably have to find, I'm going to make up a number, $600-700 million. Rather than the $390 million we had to find before last week in order to rejuvenate all those facilities. So it's going to be important to really start on that strategy now. But it's also important to recognize that we are in an environment where we are more capital constrained than we ever have been since I've been in this job. Meaning that council, myself, and citizens are going to have to temper our expectations. We've almost been a bit spoiled over the last several years because we've been able to build so much, you know, historic investments in infrastructure across the city, and we're just not in a position where we'll be able to do that going forward.
Do you think the feds and the province would be okay with the city keeping that money for the Olympic bid?
One must always try. And in fact, the work that we were just talking about in terms of determining exactly what we can do in an alternative plan, I think that would be pretty good use for that money.
Do you think that's realistic?
I think so. The rest of it, the question is it realistic then, I'll just ask your next question for you, is it realistic for us to think about that $2.2 billion in funding from the province and the federal government, and any of that still coming to Calgary? And the answer is, of course, we have to try. In the federal government's case, that money is set aside for sport anyway. In the province's case, that was money they were willing to invest in the province's largest city and economic engine. So I will continue to advocate, as I do every day, strongly for investments in Calgary.
Councillor Urquhart suggested that it's just foolish at this point, after rejecting the Olympic bid, to ask for them to continue to uphold commitments that were made for the Olympics.
I wouldn't say it was foolish. I think you got to ask. If you don't ask, the answer is automatically no. That said, are we going to get all of it? No. Will we get those investments in affordable housing? Probably not. Do our government partners agree with the desperate need to work on these facilities, most of which they built, and rejuvenate them? I think they do. But I think we've got to figure out a plan that makes sense for them and for us, understanding that we have no choice but to do this stuff.
Monsieur Nenshi, est-ce que c'est réaliste de penser que la province et Ottawa vont donner un peu d'argent si vous avez promis?
Absolument. Tous les autres ordres de gouvernement ont fait beaucoup de travail. On fait beaucoup de travail de penser sur tous les besoins de Calgary. Et vraiment, il y a des besoins avec ou sans les Olympiques. Et il y a des besoins avant la rénovation des facilités et de bâtir un nouveau field house. Et ces besoins ne partent pas. Ils sont toujours là. Donc, c'est très, très important de fonder tous les besoins de Calgary.
Is there a sense of how much work those facilities need, or like a dollar?
Yes, actually, and that's the good news on the work that was done, particularly by the Bid Exploration Committee, as well as by the Bid Committee. We have a better understanding of the conditions and the needs of those venues than we've ever had before. In fact, probably better than we have on most city venues. So now we've got a real good sense of exactly what needs to be done, but we got to go back to the drawing board to really think about how to sequence those things, since we can't do them all at once.
Last question.
Can you explain the timing of the winding of a big corporation? Why is it taking that time?
You know, it takes some time because you've just got to sort things out. You've got people's contracts and all that stuff that you have to clear out. But even though the BidCo only existed for a short period of time, it became the custodian of a bunch of things from the city. So you've got to do a bunch of things, like who gets ownership of what documents? How do you figure all of that out? How do you move forward in wrapping up some of the work that was almost done that might be helpful with or without the Olympics, things like building condition assessments and venue plans? How do you figure out the best way to transition that work into bids on other kinds of events that might want to come to Calgary? So there is some work to be done. We're already late November, so I think giving them a month or two to sort that out, given the Christmas break, makes a ton of sense.
How much of that should be put with?
I think a ton of it can be public. I think that there are some things that is data about, for example, about buildings that we don't own, and it's up to the building owners to release that. I think all the financial stuff, I don't see why, in terms of what was spent and so on, I don't see why that couldn't be public.
Thanks, guys.
Councillor Davidson has made it very clear that his vision for Calgary's event centre. Are you going to be a champion for that?
Well, I think what we have to do is figure out what the deal looks like. You know, let's not forget that in the 2017 election, citizens very, very clearly said that they are very wary of the amount of public funding going into an event center like that. I've also heard big arguments around how the event center will revitalize the downtown core and help us create a second downtown. I need to understand those a lot better, because when you're dealing with 30% office vacancy, the last thing you want to do is build new office towers. That's bad for everybody. And when you're dealing with a giant glut in condos, I can't see a bunch of private sector people moving forward to build a condo just because it happens to be a block closer to an arena than their existing condo that's empty. So we need to understand this really well, because ultimately citizens told us and council has reaffirmed that public dollars must be for public benefit, and we need to determine what that public benefit is.
Okay, thank you.
Take a question on the water?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just going to ask what comes next given that we saw that down today. It was
That
pretty
was-
contentious at committee and contentious today too.
That was a strange vote, you know. It was one of these things where I was a little busy with other stuff, so I didn't track that through committee. I wish I had. It was a very strange vote, because ultimately, if we cut people's water off, we take a write-off, so we don't get the money, and we make people's lives more miserable and force them into a poverty trap. And I think council members understand that, and they understand that we've got to do something that's better than what we do now. And one alternative is you just never cut people's water off, but then what's the incentive of actually fixing the problem or paying your bills? So ultimately, we got to get carrots and sticks right here. What I heard from members of council was, I'm not too mad at that vote, because what I heard from members of council was that they were actually concerned about the process and the timing of the pilot project. Let's see if we can fix that after lunch and a motion arising, because my sense is that members of council actually understand there's a problem and understand our need to help people who fall in hard times.
Mr. Nenshi, Prime Minister Notley just said that she can't say that there will be money for infrastructures here in Calgary for sport infrastructure.
Yeah, and I think what she probably said is she can't say whether there will or whether there won't. So the conversations continue.